Afternoon, 1302 students. I wanted to do some short lectures. I'll probably do them separately over the three texts, the three stories that you have a choice of writing your essay over, the setting essay. So I'm going to talk about the Kate Chopin text first, the storm. And I think you can see how, if you've read the text, how important the backdrop, the setting, how important it is in this story. I mean, it's the backbone of the whole story, and it's in a lot of ways responsible to some extent for the actions of the characters. And also, I would encourage you to read the little short bios that they have before the stories, and because that'll, I think, little if you know more about your authors, it will help you in understanding and analyzing the text. So we know that Kate Chopin was raised by her grandmother, who was Creole, and then she also married a Creole man, and they lived in Louisiana. So she was exposed to Creoles and Cajuns, and she was very familiar with that culture, that French culture. And that's the majority of her texts, her stories, and even her novels are centered around Louisiana and the Cajun and Creole society. So that's what we have going on in The Storm. We have a Creole man, Alcise. And by the way, she has several stories about Alcise and Callista. And so there's really a background to these two characters. And if you read there's several other stories about those two characters that take place before the storm. So if you like this story and you're interested in reading more of Kate Chopin's work, I would encourage you to maybe try to find her other short stories. And also, she has a great novel, The Awakening, which is also very, very good. And that's probably what she's most known for is that novel. But in any case, so the fact that this story is taking place in this culture in Louisiana, it lends itself to the actions of the characters. And so we know that Callista is married. Obviously, she had had a prior relationship with Alcise. And by the way, it's really important to understand Alcise is Creole, and he's a wealthy Creole, and while Callista is Cajun. And back in that time period, there was a difference. The Cajuns were the workers, I guess you could say, often worked the plantations in the farms of the wealthy Creoles. So there's a big difference there. And in fact, if you go back and read the stories, not to give too much away, but that's the reason that Callista and Alceste are not married is because he was very wealthy and Creole, and it would not have been acceptable for him to marry a Cajun woman. And so, but at the same time, certainly they have feelings for each other. But again, it's all against this backdrop of the setting, which is taking place in sultry Louisiana. There's a storm. All those things add up, and to what happens and transpires in the action of this story. So those would be things that you want to talk about if you're going to write your essay over the setting and the importance of the setting in this story. Is how the setting is so important to the story. Without it taking place in Louisiana during a storm, then it would be very difficult for Chopin to have been able to show this afternoon tryst, if you will, between these two characters without it seeming extremely maybe. I'm not going to say, I'm not, on either side, there's no judgment going on here. But what my point is that because it is in that backdrop, and we know, because she alludes to it, whether you've read the other stories, the prior stories or not, about these two characters, Chopin alludes to the fact in this story that they had a prior relationship. And with their culture, with their prior relationship, and there this tryst happening in the afternoon when they're caught together during a storm, so things were completely unplanned. In some ways, I guess, would make the characters still seem, I guess, for readers to have somewhat of a sympathetic, maybe give them a little pass on that. It's not like they plan things and, things happen. And again, I'm not, condoning or anything like that. I'm just saying that because of the setting and the fact that it takes place when it does during a storm, the Cajun and Creole culture, especially in this time period, that it makes more sense. Maybe it's more acceptable on some level that these two people who are married to other people have this relationship one afternoon. So that's how, if I were going to write an essay over setting in the storm, that's probably what I would center on. So you could certainly in your essay, you would want to talk about the Cajun and the Creole, especially in this time period, Cajun and the Creole cultures. And that's where you could actually get some really good sources. Would be to look up and do a little bit of research on those in the cultures of those two groups um, in Louisiana, and that would be great sources. And that would be a whole right there. That would be a pretty good chunk, I think, of your essay. And then, the backdrop of the storm and how that contributed to, the theme of the story, certainly the tone of the story, the actions of the characters, all that again goes back to setting. So that might be the things that you would want to bring in on your essay and concentrate on along with the setting. So anyway, I hope that maybe that helps a little bit. If you have any questions, maybe you're thinking about writing your essay over this story and you want to run something by me, or you have any questions, please don't hesitate to send me an email. Have a good evening.